Hello and welcome everybody. My name is P.U. Roy. I'm a program manager here at University of Washington, Professional and Continuing Education. And I also manage alumni engagement for our programs of non-credit certificate programs. So this has been a special year for all of us. And many of us are taking this chance to think about proactively where we want to be and where we want to take our careers from here. And to that end, and to also the end that we are not being able to host in-person events this year, we have decided to host a series of 4 resources with Matt Youngquist. Matt Youngquist has worked with PCE for many years now. He's an experienced career counselor, career guide and host, and he's hosted about 500 workshops in his life. He's been doing this for 25 years and has helped more than 15,000 students. So without further ado, I want to introduce Matt. Matt, take it away.
Hi, thank you, PU. Hello, everybody. I'm glad the 80-degree weather kind of calmed down a bit, or I think we were going to have a little more attrition, but we've got a good turnout tonight. And yeah, I just want to return the thanks to UW and UW PCE for organizing these events, giving me a platform to talk about some of the stuff I love talking about. So what you're in for tonight, we've got a 90-minute webinar. The first hour, I'm going to be concentrating exclusively on how to build and optimize your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is, of course, a massive system. There's so much you can do with it that you could never fit everything about LinkedIn into one session. So we're going to concentrate on profiles tonight. For those who can join next week, we're going to ease into the more proactive use of the tool, the networking and job finding and all that. So tonight's really just about profiles. Just to add a little bit more about my background and what qualifies me to come share with you all. I'm a proud alumni of University of Washington, and when I got out of the school in the early 90s, just to date myself, I found myself, I was a pretty good student, but when I got out in the real world, I rapidly figured out no one had taught me or I hadn't gotten any training in how to look for a job or how to advance your career. It was this big missing life skill that, like, to this day, people still aren't trained very heavily in. So I just went out and stumbled around, and as the universe would have it, I ended up doing data entry and admin work for a startup that was doing executive career coaching. And I kind of fell in love with the field, the idea of helping people promote themselves, market themselves, be successful in their careers. And the timing was interesting because right after that is when literally the internet came about and took off, which changed the entire game. Those of us old enough to remember that. So I was right at the forefront when the internet and all these online job sites and social media and all these tools came about. And so a huge part of my practice over the years has been in just, studying these tools and trying to find good practical advice on how to use them. I have great empathy for job hunters just because I can barely keep up and I do this for a living. So I know it's really confusing and frustrating for job hunters and career professionals. And in particular, LinkedIn, I always joke and say I have a stormy love affair with LinkedIn because I do think it is the single most useful tool ever invented for career advancement and job hunting. But after teaching the tool for 15 years, it frustrates the heck out of me, as I'm sure it does you, because they constantly change things and a lot of the sites aren't very or parts of the site aren't very user friendly. So my mission here is to at least help uncomplicate a part of it. I think I was once notified by LinkedIn, I was the 97,000th user-ish that joined the site. Now they're up to about 600 million. So almost everyone is now on LinkedIn, but again, it's surprising how many folks still aren't using it to full capacity. So anyway, I'm gonna walk you through a lot of advice here. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between some slides I've prepared and some live demonstrations of LinkedIn. The session is being recorded and we're going to find a way to distribute the slides to everyone who attends. So everything you're going to see me present, you'll have access to. And last but not least, while you're welcome to use the Q&A box to throw in some questions as we go, if you noted on the agenda, after the first hour, I've got a whole half an hour dedicated to Q&A. So if after the hour you've got everything you need, you're welcome to sign off and go your merry way. For any of you who still need some better explanation of things or have specific questions, I'll stick around and answer those at the end. Okay? All right, well, let's dive in. A couple opening thoughts I always like to share on the tool. So as I mentioned earlier, I've looked at a lot of websites. I mean, thousands and thousands of sites that have come and gone. And I hate to say it, I think the vast majority of technologies related to careers and networking end up being pretty worthless. But LinkedIn used properly is a gold mine. It is just the fact that most people are on it, but not really using it to full effect. So I'm just kind of standing by that statement here. A lot of people get confused between what's the difference between a resume and a LinkedIn profile. So a lot of the content is going to be similar, and we're going to be going through that in great detail, but there are some important differences, and that's really why this webinar exists, is to show, you've got your resume, but how do you approach your LinkedIn profile in a bit of a different way? And to the person who asked the question, yes, UW PCE will find a link or a way to get you access to this video later, okay? Or some others can answer as well, okay? Another thing I want to share for those newer to LinkedIn, there is no draft mode. So if you make changes to your profile, that anything you change is instantly visible to all 600 million users. So you not only want to make sure, if you have big changes you want to make, you might want to do those offline in Microsoft Word or whatever, but just be aware that, yeah, anything you put on your profile, it's not hidden. You don't save it. Just if you put it in there, it's going to be seen by people. So you got to be a little bit cautious on that. Again, for fairly new users, how do you even edit your profile? So I'm teaching this class with the assumption, fair or unfair, that almost everyone on this call has a LinkedIn account. If you're not on LinkedIn, it's pretty basic to get on there. No one, most people don't need to be paid users or anything, but that would be sort of a different subject for the class. For all of you who are on LinkedIn, as you probably already know, once you log into LinkedIn, so right now we're looking at a screen of the home page of LinkedIn, you can either click on your name on the left, or in some cases, the interface will say view profile under that, does the same thing. So your name or view profile, or if you want to go the long way, you can go over to the Me menu, click on view profile there. So all of those things, those are just 3 different ways to get to your edit profile screen, which is where we have the chance to tinker with and make any changes to your profile. I also suspect most or all of you know that as you go through your edit profile screen, the little blue pencils next to everything, that's how you edit them. So it's sort of section by section. You click the little blue pencils and it allows you to change things. So I suspect most of you knew that, but just for whatever it's worth, I wanted to share it. Okay. Now, a few questions came in that I anticipated. So my first point was, if you put any information on LinkedIn, you sort of assume, or it's going to be visible to all the users on LinkedIn. But there are a few settings that can improve your confidentiality or affect certain things. Okay. So if you go on LinkedIn and you go up to the Me icon at the top, one of the submenus is settings and privacy. And in that, if you open that up, you're going to see dozens and dozens of different settings on how you can configure your LinkedIn experience. The vast majority of them, you're not even going to have to worry about, and the default is just fine. But I always call out, there's a few particular settings that I think many people might want to look at a little deeper. So the first one, the most famous one, it used to be called the alerts setting, and now they changed the name of it. But if you go onto your settings menu and scroll down, you're going to see one that says share job changes, education changes, and work anniversaries. So with that setting, it's either off or on. If you have it on, it means, which is the default, it means anytime you change one of the jobs you work at or a place you went to school or something like that, it's going to send out an automatic alert to all of your friends on the system and say, so-and-so changed their profile. So if you're in a confidential job hunting situation, you obviously don't want probably to draw a lot of attention with your boss and your colleagues if you're connected to people that, oh, suddenly you're making all these changes to your profile. And I would even say, if you're not in a confidential situation, it's sort of annoying to have all these automatic alerts go out. So I recommend for most people, you find that setting, you turn it off, and you just leave it off, right? There's really no need. You need LinkedIn to automatically share that information with people, in my opinion. Okay. The second setting I encourage you to think about is there's one called viewers of this profile also viewed. Now that just means when someone looks you up on the right side of the page, it's going to show people like you, however LinkedIn determines that. Now in actual practice, that often turns out to be your competitors or people with very similar skills to you. So I can't think of a single reason for our benefit we would want a bunch of people like us to show up on the side of the screen. So I think that's kind of a silly setting. I suggest people turn that one off as well. Okay, another setting that's often misunderstood is there's a setting in that main settings menu called profile viewing options. It's got 3 choices. It says when you look at someone else's profile on LinkedIn, do you want them to see your name and know that you stopped by? Do you want to be totally anonymous and not leave a trace that you've seen their profile? And there's a middle option where it hides your name, but includes something about you, like a project manager at Microsoft looked at your profile. Honestly, that middle setting is the worst of both worlds. So you're either going to be okay sharing your name with people or being anonymous. Let me just show you real quick. If I jump over to LinkedIn here, again, I go up to the Me menu. I go down to the Settings and Privacy submenu. Okay, scroll down, you'll see all these different settings. Okay, here's that viewers of this profile also viewed one that I encourage you to turn to no. Okay, but this is the one I was just talking about, profile viewing options. So it has 3 options: show all your info, show none of your info. So this one is up to you. The only real negative of going the anonymous route in hiding the fact that you visit people's profile is it will then not tell you anyone who's looked at your profile. It wipes out all the data that's been captured about who's looked at you. So in other words, you can't have your cake and you can't have your cake. Oh, you're not seeing my LinkedIn screen, someone is saying. That's interesting. Let's see if we can fix that. Thank you for telling me. Let's see. Any chance you can see my LinkedIn screen now? You're seeing the PowerPoint?
Matt, you need to share screen at the bottom. If you
I
can
thought I was already doing that. I'm trying that again here. Let's see.
And you can also adjust which screen the participants are seeing. So there's a top, typically on the top right, there is a small window. And this is for the participants, not so much for you, Matt, because I can see your screen right at the, it's
Okay.
big in mine.
So,
and that's because I've minimized the video. And
I think people said they can see it now. Can you see LinkedIn now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I somehow had that wrong screen being shared. So all I was showing you folks, thanks for letting me know. I thought I had mastered Zoom after 4 months in quarantine, but apparently not. So I was just showing you, if you go on LinkedIn, go to the home page, go up to the Me menu. That's where the settings and privacy piece is. This is where all the settings I'm talking about, and I had just scrolled down to show, which one was I on? Profile viewing options. And this is where you have these 3 options. Show all your info, show none of your info, or show a little bit of info. Okay. So I was just saying most people are just fine letting your if you stop by someone's profile, it's fine leaving your name and letting them know you looked at them. But if you go anonymous, just be aware, it then does not let you see anyone who's looked at you. It doesn't let you have your cake and eat it too, is what I was saying. So most people should stay the default, but if you're in a super confidential mode, then you might go with the anonymous route. But the big setting, the one that really affects most things, is the one I mentioned, share job changes. So that one by default is on. Turn that off. And again, as someone asked, there is no draft version. So if I change my profile and my boss goes and looks at my profile, they're going to see anything that's on there instantly. There is no draft mode. But the point is, if I turn this setting off, it will not alert that boss or anyone else that I did change my profile. It won't draw attention to it, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. I see lots of questions coming in. Again, most of them we'll have to answer in the last half an hour, particularly if they're not related to profiles, because that's what we're going to focus on most. Okay. One final thing I'm going to mention before we get into profiles themselves. A common issue I've had with clients, and I have to warn you about this in advance, is if any of you have signed up for LinkedIn using an email account you don't control, like if you signed up with a work account, the problem is LinkedIn knows you're you by your email address. So I've had people get laid off or leave jobs. And if that ever happens and LinkedIn is assigned to your work account, you can't access LinkedIn anymore. So you really want to make sure that you set up in the settings menu, LinkedIn, either your main email address is a personal address that you control, or you can set up a backup address. So if you want to keep your work address as your main one, just go into the account email address field, and you can add another address and set it as the backup. Okay, so just making sure, it's a real pain in the butt if you get kicked out of LinkedIn and can't prove you're you with email access. It takes a while to get them to reinstate you. So just double check that if you're wondering about it. Okay, so a few settings there that I particularly recommend you look at. Okay, but now we're on to the main event. Now we're going to talk about the profile piece. So what's going on here? I'm sure some of you on this webinar know what the term SEO means. Others probably do not. So SEO, search engine optimization, is the fancy word that just basically means for the last 30 years, companies have tried every trick in the book to show up higher on Google because they want to come up. If someone searches for flower shop in Bellevue or bike repair shop in Seattle or whatever else, they want to come up on the first page of Google or the second page, right? Because most of us don't scroll down through 20 pages kind of thing. So the game on LinkedIn is recruiters and employers are using this site all the time now to find talent and find people to interview. But if you show up way, way down the list, person 1700 out of the set, it's much less chance you're going to be found. So one of the primary reasons of the stuff I'm going to teach you is to just increase your ranking, increase, that you show up much higher in the list, maybe on the first, second, third page than way down below. And that's a lot of these tricks are going to accomplish that. Now, to demonstrate the techniques I'm going to show you, I'm going to be going back and forth, as you've already seen, from a fictitious profile I've created on LinkedIn for a fellow named Joe Jobseeker that I just set up as a dummy account to show people, here's what I think a good profile generally looks like. So we're going to be going back and forth from Joe's profile, and all of you can certainly just go on LinkedIn, look up the name Joe Jobseeker, and look for this picture. Believe it or not, there's more than one Joe Jobseeker on LinkedIn. If you want to just go to his profile live as an illustration of some of these techniques. Okay, so if you're wondering why are we looking at this Joe guy, it's because I wanted to use his as an example, not my own, because I've set my profile up more as a business owner, and I'm suspecting most of you want to see what it looks like more from a standard professional or a job seeker kind of thing. Okay, so that explains that mystery. So going top to bottom on a profile. So if you were to pull up your edit profile screen, let me tell you the best practices here. So right at the top of your profile, everyone gets 2 chances to make a visual impression. And whether you believe it or not, visual impressions count. Whether it's on eBay and you're looking to buy something and a product with a photo gets like 3 times the hits as a product without a photo. So you want to give some thought to these 2 places at the top you can put a visual. The most obvious thing is your photograph. You get one place that you can edit and stick in a photograph. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but a no photograph is probably better than a bad photograph, and a good photograph is better than both options. So you get one chance to kind of brand yourself and make yourself look like an approachable, friendly someone would want to hire. So what we're trying to avoid there, and I'm going to come back in a second, but we're trying to avoid the tons of photos I see that are like a selfie against a wall or underexposed, I can't really see your face, or weirdly photoshopped and manipulated, or just downright inappropriate. I've seen some that I'm just like, what in the world is that doing on there? So a lot of people don't give much thought. I've seen people, wedding couples, who just cut out half their wedding photo and stick it in, but there's an arm, going over their shoulder. So it doesn't mean you have to get a professional photo taken, although you can get that done for $100, $200 today. If you have a friend with a halfway decent cell phone, just dress, appropriately, semi-professionally, stand outside or by some natural light, smile, look approachable, and have them take a shot. And that photo will work just fine. So we're looking more for the ones you see on the top row here, this kind of thing. It can be kind of an interesting pose. It can be a more casual pose if that fits your career. Or if you're really creative, you could try something more interesting like at the bottom, but these are special cases where there's like a particular, these are fun-loving people, or this fellow here sells oxygen systems to aircraft. So that funny photo kind of makes sense. That's not normal, but my point is some people get a little more wild and crazy. Now, one last thing I want to mention, if you look at the bottom of the slide, don't ask me why, but the one loophole in the privacy setting is if you change your photo, An alert will go out to your friends regardless of how you have that one setting turned off. It always triggers an alert. I don't know why they can't seem to fix that. But again, if you're in a super confidential situation, as much as you might want to change your photo, you might want to hold off if you somehow suspect your boss or someone seeing you change your photo would lead to a chain of suspicion or something. For most of you, it's not going to be a problem. But for one weird reason or another, photos always trigger alerts. Don't know why. Always has been that way. Okay, back to this other thing. Now, behind the photo, most people know about the photo, there's the wallpaper. So you've got this horizontal image behind the photo. You can customize that too, so that it doesn't look like the just standard template. Most LinkedIn profiles have this aqua star pattern. So if I went into Joe Jobseeker's profile here, I went to edit it. Okay, I click on the blue edit pencil, which controls all these fields at the top. Okay, again, you can edit your photo by clicking the little pencil there, but I can also go up here and click this one, and that allows me to replace the normal background image. I've already done it here, but with an abstract design, some piece of clip art or a digital image, something relevant to your brand. So let me just show you a few quick examples. Here's someone who just found, like, I think a colorful metaphorical image to put behind her photo. I guess she is the creative green umbrella in a sea of boring generic umbrellas or something. But yeah, it's different. It stands out. Some executives or people might do something a little more high production, like this executive kind of has this atmospheric shot of her at work behind there. That's another option. What else do we got here? Here's someone I think both has a really good photo, just down to earth, smiling, looking approachable, but she's a video game person, a designer or something. So she's got a wallpaper that kind of relates to video games and has some kind of energy to it. So it's up to you. I mean, you could leave it as the default, but I think if you can find some imagery, that fits what you're doing. Again, it just sets you apart from 95% of other people. So a lot of people don't know you can do that, but it is an option. I did notice someone did ask the question, if you're making lots of updates, change the photo last. And I would agree with that. Joe asked that question, but I would agree with that unless, again, you're in confidential mode, really confidential mode, then I probably wouldn't change your photo at all just to avoid triggering that. But if that's not a concern, then yeah, probably do your photo last. Okay. So we looked at a few examples. The next section of a profile right under your name at the top is an important one. It's called the headline field, and it can be up to 120 characters of text long. Now, it's a pivotal one because this is the first text people are going to read about you. This is going to be the first thing they look at that not only tells them what do you do for a living, but also it counts the words in this section, count extra in the search formula. Remember how I talked about trying to rank highly on LinkedIn? Words in this section are given extra credit. So by default, what LinkedIn puts in that headline is your last job or current job title and your current or last employer. So I would bet 80 to 90% of you have a headline that just says whatever you do for a living, project manager at Microsoft or barista at Starbucks or whatever it might be. That's not a good headline really for two reasons. One, like I said, is it's missing the chance to add 10 or 12 more words that relate to your career and that will get extra credit. And the second reason is a lot of times people's titles don't really do justice to what they do for a living. Like technically, if I put on mine President of Career Horizons, I suppose that's my title, it's my company, but that doesn't tell anybody what I do. So I instead made my headline career coach, LinkedIn trainer, resume writer, something that would describe better so people would understand, oh, that's what he does. So as you can see in the example here, I encourage you to think hard about up to about 15 words you can squeeze in there. And try to convey in those 12, 15 words the best espresso shot of what you do professionally. Often that's going to be a job title or two or three combined with a statement like expertise in blah, 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 and blah, or it might be industry, specializing in the high tech and software industry. You might stick a MBA or an educational credential in there. So look here on the next page, I've got just 6. These are more creative examples, not necessarily ones I'm saying to emulate, but just here's 6 different ways people have fleshed out that headline under their name. Okay, so you'll see some people, expert building motivated teams, and the strategist, energizer, influencer, they're choosing some creative words. Down here, this is the most conservative one that just says COO, CFO, trusted advisor for startups, restarts, and turnarounds. Okay, gives me a good sense of what he does. And then some people get really creative or use humor. I don't particularly like this one. I think this seems pretty arrogant, but this person said, I've helped 8 companies reach 1 billion. So he's just going for shock value or whatever. That's pretty rare. But the main thing is, I would bet, again, most of you have the default, which is just not doing justice to what you could put in there career-wise. So think about that, okay? You would just edit that section, replace that bottom list. Like, this is good. I mean, project manager, but even just to pick on this person, PM is not the same as spelling out project manager. So if she wants to get found for project manager, she really should spell that out. And then she's got about 10 more words she could use to get credit. So I would say something like slash, I don't know exactly what she does, but if it's game design, structure, play style and something, I don't know, or consumer and casual and mobile games, but I'm just begging for, give me a little bit more. You've got some extra room there. Okay. So that's what headlines are pretty much about. Again, looking at so many good questions coming in, most I'm going to have to answer at the end. If you're looking to make a career change, that's an interesting point. So generally, if you're making a career change and you're actively ready to do that, I would change the headline to reflect what you want to be next or what you want to do. Now, keep in mind, though, if you're currently working somewhere, your boss and your coworkers will probably freak out if you're an accountant, but suddenly your LinkedIn profile says you want to be a private investigator. So I can't say again enough, use common sense. You know, don't put anything on your profile you really wouldn't want anyone to see. But if there's not confidentiality, if you're actively trying to get into a new career, I would shift it in the direction of what you want to do, right? Because that's the kind of people you want to find you. Okay. There's other people, another question I saw come in that's relevant. Some people think that you should say, I'm openly looking for a job or seeking a job in the headline itself. You see people who literally write those words. There's a debate on that. There's some recruiters and some people who think, yeah, you should do that. Make it crystal clear you're looking for a job. There's others, including myself, that don't think you should be quite that bold, because there's a setting right underneath that I'm going to show you that does the same thing and tells people, yes, I'm open to a new job. So I personally don't think you should waste the headline text saying something about that. Others may disagree, but that is a common question. Okay. So another good question came in. If you find a wallpaper image, is there a copyright issue? Well, yes, you shouldn't use an image for your wallpaper behind your photo that someone has copyright. So you'll have to look for free wallpaper, free image. You'll have to check whatever image you find, or you can buy one for a few bucks off most stock photo sites. But yeah, definitely I can't encourage you to use a photo or use a wallpaper that that's someone's intellectual property. So there's places to find that if you Google around and stuff. Okay. All right. Good questions. Lots of them coming in. All right. Headline. The next section is probably the toughest of all, or the one I think most people, it takes the most time. So the about section, as it's called, it used to be called the summary, but they changed it to about, is a huge box. It's 2,600 characters, just a big blank box. You can do just about anything you want with. You can leave it blank. You can copy your resume stuff in. You could write poetry. The world's your oyster. But if the question is, what are we trying to accomplish with this section? I would argue it's twofold. It's to give a clear sense of what you do and what sets you apart. So telling your story about what you do professionally and maybe a little bit about your personality and strengths. But at the same time, I want to feed the robots. I want to get a lot of the keywords. This is going to be the first key place you inject a bunch of keywords in, so that all these recruiter searches, all these employers, pretty much what they're doing is hunting by keyword. So how I usually do it in most cases, as you can see on the screen here, is I write a paragraph or two that explains, what does this person kind of do for a living? Oh, I'm a financial manager with 20 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. The second paragraph, I usually try to put a little differentiation, a little personality. My reputation is this. I pride myself on this. My key points of difference are this. So the first paragraph is kind of what I do, and the second paragraph is kind of what sets me apart. Once I've done that, I then mix it up and put in bullets to break up the heavy paragraphs. And here's where I play the keyword game. I get like 20 or 30 keywords really related to that person's career. And I just insert these bullets. Now, as it says on the right side, LinkedIn does not have a built-in bullet feature. So if you're wondering, how did he get those nice, pretty round bullets in here? You go into Microsoft Word, you insert a bullet symbol in a Word document or probably any Office document and just copy and paste it over. So if you're looking for a nice bullet symbol, you copy them out of Microsoft Word and stick them in here. Some symbols work, some don't, but the basic round one works and I think looks just a little better than putting a hyphen or a typewritten character or something like that. So I put in like 20 or 30 keywords there, and then I finish it. You can't quite see it, but I finish it at the bottom with a lot of times what people miss is industries that they've worked in. That's another very commonly searched type of keyword that recruiters look for. So I usually will say industry experience includes whatever, you know, food and beverage, consumer products, retail. If you're younger in your career starting out, maybe you don't have a lot of industry experience, but maybe there's some industries you're targeting. So I would instead change it to say industries that interest me or industries I'm passionate about include sustainability, environmental health, social justice, something like that. But the point is in the bullets, I'm usually trying to get the skill words in there. And in the paragraph underneath, I'm trying to hit some of the industry words or product types you've worked with. I've had salespeople who haven't worked in these industries, but they say experience selling to numerous customer verticals, including biotechnology, life sciences, consumer products, on and on and on. Now, you don't have to do that, but that's just what I often stick in that last paragraph is something about industries, okay? So that's one way you can do it. I think that's kind of a tried and true template. Now, one question I'm sure some of you have, because I get this all the time, is this example is written not in the first person and actually not in the third person. I had to look this up years ago. It's called the implied first person, which means you're talking about yourself. You're just not using the pronoun I. So in this case, we decided this person was more comfortable with kind of resume tone, like instead of saying I am a senior finance, just saying senior finance executive. Like most resumes use that style. It's totally fine if you want to be more personable and say I did this, I did that, talk about yourself in the first person. Different people do different things on that. So this example is the implied first person. Other people go with first person. Let me show you an example of that. So in the next couple slides, I'm going to show you different approaches to the about section. Just again, show you there's a lot of possibilities here. So this next one I'm showing you is a woman in Louisiana I came across years ago, got her permission to include this, where you can clearly see by scanning it, she is much more personal. She's talking about her personality, what she's known for. She puts a bunch of adjectives in there. I could see some people being turned off by that or thinking it's too self-congratulatory. I don't know. I liked it. I felt like between that description and her big beaming smile, I feel like I know this woman. And when I asked for permission, she was what you see is what you get. She was so sweet and, hey, if you ever get down to Louisiana, come look me up and I'm flattered. And so some people choose to kind of wear their heart on the sleeve and really put more of their personality in there, okay? This is a different approach. Here's another person I came across once who's in the user experience field. If you read this about section, what I love about this one is how much thought she put into it. I think there's a lot of just good copywriting, interesting, provocative language, someone who really decided to kind of break the mold and just write some powerful stuff about her field. Now, some people might like this like myself, others may not like it. This would be tough for me or anyone else to write for somebody because I think this kind of stuff really has to come from the heart and really reflect your own style. But I just wanted to show you this one is much more creative than what my standard one is because this person put a lot of thought into what they wanted to convey and how they do their work, and they put it. Now, however, to her credit, at the bottom, you see she still got a bunch of keywords in. So that's kind of non-negotiable. If you don't have those keywords in there, you become a lot less findable. And someone who's asked the question a number of times about how you make your profile more seeable by recruiters, honestly, everything I'm teaching you is going to help with that. So everything I'm conveying tonight is going to make you more findable by recruiters. So there really isn't any separate tricks beyond what I'm showing you. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Last but not least, I don't know if this applies to any of you, but if sometimes people have their own business or are working for a business they're trying to use LinkedIn to promote, or they're a consultant or something like that. So it's certainly also fine to write a profile that talks about your company or the company you work for, and maybe blends your own personal information with what the company's doing. So I've had people, for example, that are trying to help their company find people to hire. So they write about, please contact me if you're looking to work for our Tableau software. I've had, what else have I seen? Links to websites of companies, or a menu of services like on mine. That's what I've got for mine. But my point is, again, usually LinkedIn is about you. It's about you as an individual professional. But every once in a while you can blend it, or there might be a compelling reason to talk and promote some business instead. So that's fine too. So you've got in the recording and the slides, there's these 4 examples. You'll see plenty of other ways people do it, but I'll stick to my guns. As long as you accomplish a reader understands what you do for a living, gets a little taste of your personality, and you hit a bunch of the right keywords, that's a pretty darn good about section. And I'll tell you, most people just have 1 or 2 or 3 sentences in here, which is a very underutilization of this important section. I imagine a lot of you are in that boat as well. So lots you can do with that one, okay? Let's see if any questions. People ask, do spaces count in the character counts? Yes, they do. So both in the headline and the about section, spaces do count. So you have to be cognizant of that. If you try to put something in that doesn't fit, it'll tell you. It won't let you put it in. So you can try putting stuff in. Someone asked about font. Good news is you can't change the font. The font's automatic. LinkedIn just has one font. So it's not like resumes where you're adjusting that. Someone asked, I'm trying to catch up here, does changing the wallpaper image alert everyone? That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to. I would assume it does, that if you change your wallpaper, just like changing your photo, it will trigger an alert. You could test that, I guess, but I would assume it does. So I wouldn't do that if you're in a super confidential section. If you're switching to here's a couple questions that came in about career change, which makes sense given I'm assuming many of you are students pursuing a career change. If you're changing careers, and again, you can be open about it, so you're not trying to be confidential because you got another job that's totally different, I would use this about section to talk about that. Experienced project manager in the process of reinventing into a business intelligence career, or whatever it might be, or pursuing my passion for accounting and currently getting a certificate in accounting for UW PCE. So you could do that both up in the headline, and you can also do that in the about section if you can be overt about it. At the same time, if you're just starting your studies or you're not quite ready to change careers yet or start job hunting, you might want to wait a little bit till you get a little farther along. But yeah, nothing is preventing you from turning the battleship and writing this from the standpoint of the career you want to be in, even if you haven't done it. Now, you might not be able to say my areas of expertise are all these things because you're not in that career yet, but I would change the language. You could say current areas of study, or maybe not expertise, but key strengths and skills. I mean, any way you can change that header to allow you to get some of the keywords of your target career in there. So if you're trying to study to become a project manager, you could say, key coursework or areas of study include budgeting, scheduling, stakeholder management, PMBOK method, whatever. You could put some of the keywords of that target field, okay? Choosing optimal keywords, someone asked about that. There's so many different industries and jobs. All I can tell you on finding the right keywords is look at advertisements. Right or wrong, companies will tell you in advertisements, here's the language we want to see. So if you are trying to become an accountant, look up 20 ads for accountant and just look at the common language they use. If you're trying to become a private eye, look up some of those jobs, even not in Seattle, look up nationwide and just study the language and see what they've asked for that you can in some form or another get in here, okay? All right, so we're going to move on, but I hope I addressed a few of those questions, and I'll try to go back through any lingering ones at the end. Okay, there's just a lot of good questions coming in here. I could go all night, but we're only scheduled for 90 minutes, so I want to abide by our parameters here. Okay, so moving past my about examples, the next section is a little deceptive. It's the experience section, and a lot of people just dump their resume work history in there, and that's actually pretty good. I mean, this section is really designed just to have your jobs, your titles, your dates, your companies, but there's two key tricks involved in this section that a lot of people aren't aware of. The number one thing is there's not a single tip I'm going to give you tonight that will increase your rating, your ranking and where you come up in searches than keywords and job titles. Now, LinkedIn doesn't confirm this. LinkedIn has never disclosed what their formula is, but anyone who's searched as much as I have, or any power users, it quickly becomes evident. Let me show you this real quick. So if I went back to LinkedIn and I ran a search like a recruiter for a project manager. So I'm looking for a project manager. Okay, and that's a common field. There's 29 million people in the country that come up under project manager. Now, in fairness, most recruiters would then say something like who's in the Seattle area. So they would narrow it down by geography. So that gets me down to still 300,000 project managers. But watch this. Now, I didn't test this, so this may backfire. But what if I said, well, oh, I don't want to talk to 29,000 people. I need a project manager who's got experience in the construction field, let's just say. So if I'm a recruiter and they all know how to do this, they're going to put that in, okay? And it's no accident. All the people that come up first have the word construction in their headline, even if it's accidental because it was in the name of the company they're with, it still counts, it's in the headline. If I go farther down, you'll see people, the problem is I can't even show you because so few people know to do this, but here's an example, one project manager at construction project manager consultant. Now, that's not ideally how I would do that, but the point I'm trying to show you is the top probably 300 people who came up, it's because they had the search word in their job title in their headline. That extra credit is what boosted them to the top. So what that means to all of you folks is go back through your titles that you put in there off your resume and just ask, can I either add a few extra words after the title in parentheses or after a dash to augment or enhance what my title was? So just as an example, this person, my Joe Job Seeker guy, he was a VP of finance, but the jobs he was trying to get called for were FP&A jobs, financial planning and analysis. So I asked him, have you ever had that title? And he said, no, that word wasn't even around most of my career. So all we did was put it in parentheses because he said, I did a lot of that work in that job. That just wasn't my title. So I just said heavy FP&A focus. And the moment we did that, he started getting 3 times more hits for those jobs because that word in the title made such a difference. Just like up here, he was the CFO, but I said, hey, can we mention the industry you did that in, analytics and business intelligence? Wouldn't we want to get some extra credit for those words? And he said, sure. So think about your titles. Can you enhance them? Can you augment them? And in some cases, if a company gives you a very weird title, like some poor people get given titles like Customer Ninja 3-Kindle or something, keep in mind that no other employer is going to look for that weird title. So I have had some people change their title into the mainstream title. If Amazon calls you a customer ninja and any other company would call you a customer service representative, you can change it or ask yourself, would anyone care at your company? But either change it or translate it so after customer ninja, you put in parentheses customer support specialist or something. So just again, I'm trying to make the point, titles are a really big part of this. The second part is if you're between jobs or unemployed, you're not going to have a current job, right? Because you're not working. But the catch is a lot of recruiters, when they search by current title, not past title. So it's my own subjective opinion on this. Others may disagree, but I think it's a good idea if you're not working to always have some placeholder job in here that runs to present. So you have a current title. So this is where if you're looking for a job, you could put a euphemism in for the company name, like open to opportunities, freelancer, consultant, seeking new opportunities, something like that. If you do any consulting, just put independent consultant. If you're in school, I've had some people put whatever, UW PCE, and they put project management student or certification student. Because what we're trying to do is come up with an excuse to get the title words you want in that current job, okay? So in this case, all we're saying is that this person's open to jobs, and it allowed us to say, but what his role is a CFO and a VP. Yours may look a little different than that. Okay. Yes, the power of the SEO does appear to work on past job titles from everything I've been able to tell. What else can I say here? Yeah, and you don't even have to describe that placeholder job necessarily. Again, all we're doing there is playing a game of getting title words findable and coming up with a euphemism for the company name, okay? For the rest of your jobs, I would put at least a paragraph description under each one, just a paragraph or maybe 5 to 7 bullets describing what you did in those jobs, just because, again, keywords count. So if you put some description under each job, you're going to have more keywords in there. You obviously would not share any sensitive accomplishments or sales figures or numbers like that. But to just put like a basic job description off your resume also makes a lot of sense. If you've had a lot of jobs at the same company, this question came in. If you have a lot of jobs at the same company, it will automatically group them together. I wish I had an example I could show you, but it will nest them under a tree. So it'll say Boeing, one time Boeing, and then put your jobs under, but it only does that if every one of those jobs you've held at that company was contiguous in date, there were no gaps, and if you say the exact same company name every time. So if you had like one job at Boeing and another job at Boeing Commercial Airplanes, it's not going to recognize those as the same company. But if everything is under the same company, as of a couple years ago, it will automatically nest those all together. I wish I could show you, but I'd have to go hunting for that. Okay. What other questions came in? Can I use motivational quotes in the about section? Go for it. If your personality is to share a quote or something inspiring, like I said, you can get more creative than mine are. Just make sure, you think it's appropriate. Someone asked, if I'm saying to put the student thing in your placeholder job, isn't that redundant to the next section? Good segue, which is the education section. It is, because you're going to put your education in the education section. But see, the point is, if we still want to show we're doing something right now, we're not just unemployed sitting on our butt, I would still also say I'm a student up in experience, so that I can say to present, I am studying project management or accounting, or whatever it is. Again, all I'm trying to do with that is make sure I'm found if a recruiter looks up current title has these words in it. So I think that little bit of duplication is just fine for the benefit you get of being more findable, but you can make your own decision on that. Okay. So on to the education section. This section, very straightforward. You put in your degrees, you put in, if you have any honors, awards, GPA, you can put that in, clubs, activities. It's all real basic. It's just got it there. You can add. But one thing I see a lot of people overlook, especially when you're investing a lot of time and money in education, very often I would put a list of coursework. Coursework emphasis includes whatever, accounting, this, that. Because think of it a lot, especially if you're thinking of changing careers, a lot of the topics you're studying, those are exactly the right keywords you want to have on there. So this is a perfectly valid excuse to pack in 10 or 15 keywords related to your new future field in a legitimate way, because you are studying those things. So I don't see many people with degrees that do that, but I think it can be a pretty effective thing. Another thing is you don't have to show dates on degrees. If you're worried about age discrimination, now we all know that one way or another companies will probably eventually make you fill out an application or figure out how old you are, but you don't have to put it and make it highly visible if you don't want to. You do have to put dates on your experience. You can't avoid that, but you don't have to put them on education. So watch how you do that. It's a little counterintuitive. If I go back here to LinkedIn Live, I go to my dummy guy, Joe Job Seeker. I go to edit his profile. Okay, scroll down to education. Okay, and I go to edit one of his 2 degrees. Okay, if you go down to the date section, I missed it. Where is it? Right here, start year and end year. What you have to do, if you've already picked a date and you're trying to get rid of it, you got to pick the top header, which says year. That's what blanks it out. It doesn't say blank, it doesn't say none, you got to pick the header again, save it, and that's what gets rid of your dates, if any of you want to do that. The only other thing with this section is if you have, as most of you do, certifications or licenses or other forms of education that aren't actual degrees, you could cram them in here. You could put blah, blah, blah certification at this school. I do want to call your attention, though, for those who don't know, there is an optional bunch of sections you can plug into a profile if you look up here at the blue Add Profile section link. So if you're not aware of this little box, open it up because it shows you a lot of optional things. One of which is, sorry, I got too many screens in the way here. You go poke around in the headers, and one of them is, got to get to it, is under background, licenses and certifications. So if you're pursuing a certification, hit the plus sign, that will add this new section and it'll prompt you to type in the names of your licenses and certifications. So there is this separate section for that. But if it's other kinds of training or certificates, you could put them in the main educational field. One other option, if you just took like a training class once upon a time, there's even a section in this optional box, you go down under accomplishments, that says courses. So you could specifically put in, oh, I took this course name, something like that. That's usually if it's like a one-off, I took this online training class or something like that. If it's more of a formal certificate program, I would probably put it in the education section, or if it's an actual certification, I would put it in the licenses and certification field. Questions coming in, if you have educational degrees that are not related to your field, it's kind of up to you, whether to put them. I mean, if that's the only education you have, showing some formal education is probably better than nothing. So I'd probably put it, even if it's not relevant. If it's something that somehow, the only example I can think of, like where it might work against you, like I've had some people who went to school to be a minister or something like that, and if their faith is more private or they're no longer looking for fields in the clergy, they might decide, I'm not going to put a degree that has to do with theology or something like that. I mean, it's a personal choice, but it's just common sense. I mean, whether or not you include those, there's no hard and fast rule. You can drag and drop and reorder things. So if you put in multiple certifications or degrees, there is this little, see these little horizontal lines that allows you to reorder your things if you want to for any reason. Experience, you can't. Your experience is always, your work history is by date going from recent on back. That one you can't adjust. I'm also getting the question, how far back do you go on the previous section experience? That's a loaded question, but I would say, how do I explain this? You're going to hear people say only go back 10 or 15 years because of age bias and things like that. But that doesn't work for a lot of people. If you've been at Microsoft 25 years, you can't just cut that to 10 years and pretend the other 50 never happened. Or if 10 years ago you were a director, no one's going to believe you started your career as a director. So I don't normally recommend trimming out early jobs unless you're really, really worried about, I mean, like it's your number one fear is age bias, or if you had some jobs early in your career that don't add anything. Like if for 10 years you were a graphic designer and then you changed careers and do nothing with graphic design, yeah, you might as well let those early jobs go and not put them in. Or if you had a whole bunch of redundant or survival jobs or early internships, I mean, you don't have to put them in. But again, it sort of comes down to relevance and common sense. How far would you go back to jobs that would help you get your job now, and what's your pattern? Like, again, if you've been at only a couple companies, it's going to be a lot harder to cut than if you've been at 10 companies. So that one, sorry, it's kind of an individual decision. But whatever you choose to do on your resume, you should also do on LinkedIn, because employers are going to look at both documents. You want them to be consistent. Okay. If you've got things like Google, HubSpot, LinkedIn Learning, I would put those in the, if it's an actual certification where you passed a test and got a certification, put them in the license and certifications optional section. If it's just a course you took, put them in the coursework section. Okay. If you have multiple certificates, I'd treat them all separately. I wouldn't lump them together, get credit for all those things. So just add multiple entries in there. Okay. I didn't think education had so many questions, but I guess when I'm talking to mostly a student body, I'm not surprised a lot of things would come out. Okay, I'm going to move on. I still see some questions come in. I'll do my best to answer them here when we're done with the main thing. So let me go back to my slides. Moving on from education. This is a very important section that's very often overlooked. I'd say this is in the top 3 things I'm going to share with you tonight that are going to make a difference in your ranking. The skills and endorsements section down under education, if you don't see it, you have to enable it from the optional box, but most of you should see it by default. This deceptive box is simply a place you can add up to 50 skills and qualifications and competencies you have. Okay, most people have next to nothing in here. Most people have nothing or 3 things or 5 things or 10 things. If you don't put anything in, your friends can write in things for you. So you might have like 7 things your friends put in that aren't really all that accurate about what you do for a living. So you want to take total control of this section. The most important thing I can tell you about this section is almost all of the job and recruiter functionality on LinkedIn is based strictly on what you pick here. So recruiters have tools that say, I want to find these kinds of people to hire, and they have a tool that will not look anywhere in your profile. It will look just in this section and say, who's got agile software development lifecycle and requirements gathering, or who's got budgeting, team leadership, and accounting. And the reason for that is because think of this problem. Everyone that writes their own resumes and writes their own profiles is going to use a massive, diverse bunch of language. So if a recruiter is looking for someone who does project management, 1,000 people could say that 1,000 different ways. Someone could say supervising projects. Someone could say coordinating projects. Someone could say project leadership. So recruiters are trying to find a way to standardize these skill words so they can drill right in and find the right people. And that's what this section is trying to do for you. So what your mission here, let me show you live on this one. If I go back to LinkedIn, I go up to edit my profile, okay? Oops, move that, view profile, edit profile, same thing. Okay, I scroll down underneath everything. Oh, real quickly, since I don't mention it elsewhere, and someone asked, there are optional sections for volunteer work, patents, publications, languages. So almost any other kind of information you're wondering about, someone asked, should they put their volunteer work in there? Yes, there's one of those add profile optional sections for it up here in the blue box that if you find that, it's already in this one, but you just put it in and just add that stuff in there. There's no secret to it. Again, I would put anything that's either relevant or non-objectionable. You might as well get credit for it, but there's no magic to that. The thing that is the part I was showing you is let's go to this skills and endorsements section. This is the one most people kind of blow. So what you want to do, if you're thinking, I don't have 50 skills, I'm just 10 strengths, you're wrong. There's not any professional I've met that we couldn't come up with 50 terms that relate to what they do. Skills, industry jargon, industry names they've been in, names of software programs, or even just basic low-level strengths like teamwork, communication, leadership. And on top of that, in most things, there's 5 different ways to say them. So if I'm trying to say teamwork, if I have a slot to fill, I might also say collaboration. They mean the same thing, but they're 2 different keywords that I want to cover, okay? So how the system's going to help you, if you haven't done this in a while, is you go to this section and on the right side, you hit add a new skill. The system is going to suggest a bunch of things it thinks you've got that you can just click like 7 of these. Oh, I've done that and that, and click those, and it'll put them on that list. And it does a pretty good job of that. But the other thing is if you go up in the search box and type any word that relates to what you do, it's going to bring up a menu of all the words that relate to that word. So here's where you'll slap your forehead and go, oh, I'm a project manager. Oh yeah, I've done project planning and project coordination and project estimation. You'll pick like 10 of these. So you're already 1/5 of the way there to your 50 max skills. And the magic is, see, this is telling you, this is the generally agreed terminology of the labor market because these are the terms that recruiters use to search. If I said team, if you've done some leadership, you've probably done team building, teamwork, management, team motivation, pick 10 of those. If you've, on and on and on. If I pick software, there's 10 million things that relate to that. So my point is almost anyone who goes in and uses this menu system and puts things in, they're going to find pretty quick there is a lot of different words that relate. They're just forgetting them. If I put in marketing, look at all these different terms that relate to marketing. Whether you study them or you've actually done them, if you have even a whiff of background in them, I just click on them and start adding them to that list. Okay? So your mission is to build a list of the 50 terms you most want to be found on. Once you've added those, your friends, your first degree friends, can vote for them and endorse them, it's called. I don't think you need to worry much about that because most of us think that's a pretty silly feature. There's no quality control. Your great aunt could vote for 50 things she's never seen you do. So the endorsements, how many votes you get isn't that important. What I want you to focus on is get the 50 words right, okay? Last but not least, you can pick the top 3 you want to show up at the top. And you do that by editing that section going in, and there's a push pin next to the top 3 that if I turn those off, I can go through my whole list and just pick 3 things I want to feature at the top. I can delete anything I don't want anymore. So if you've got some your friends wrote in, or you just, you can delete them and put in new ones. And lastly, it automatically puts them under these pre-built gray headers: industry knowledge, what are the other ones? Communication, tools. So if you're frustrated, like, how do I move this one up to there? You can't. It automatically somehow takes them off that list. And if it doesn't have a category, it puts them at the bottom under other skills it doesn't recognize. So you can move yours around within the categories, but you cannot jump categories. The only thing you can move out of a category are the top 3 you choose to feature at the very top. That one you can control. Okay? All right. So again, I'll say it again, a lot of the job functionality, like if you apply to a job on LinkedIn's jobs page and it says you only match 57% of the skills and you're like, I thought I was a really good fit, it's misleading. It's because it's only measuring what text did the job ad ask for and what did you put in this section. So the other keywords count above too, but there's a lot of things on this site that are only driven by this, which is why, again, I want you to really pay attention to this and just ask, what are the 50 top terms you would want to be found if someone searched on? That's what we're trying to put in there, okay? What else did someone ask? We answered that. So many questions, good. There's a skills quiz. I haven't done much of that, this new Take Skill quiz. I suppose if there's a subject that you know a lot about, you might as well. I think it gives you a little badge that says you've done it. There's not a lot of them in here, I don't believe. But I don't use that much. But you could browse there, Take Skill quiz, and just look at what choices it has. And if you're pretty sharp on some of these, sure, it'll just give you a little more formal credit on those. I wouldn't say that's a mainstream thing most people do, but it's certainly an option, okay? And again, someone asked the question, I mean, how far do you stretch something? If you've studied, someone asked SEO, you've attended a workshop, but you haven't actually done a lot of it. Common sense, I mean, if you know more about that topic than the next person, I'd still give yourself credit and put it, because I would want to get the call from a recruiter or whomever that says, hey, we see you do SEO. And I'd at least want to be able to say, well, tell me more about the job. Oh, it sounds like you need an expert tomorrow. That's not me. And you didn't say you were an expert, right? You're not necessarily saying, I am God's gift to being SEO. So I would always include things you know at least a little bit about, let the conversation happen, bow out if it's not the right fit or you're not strong enough. But yeah, I wouldn't leave a bunch of stuff out just because it's a little rusty or you're studying it. I'd still get that in there. Okay. The rest of the questions I'll try to answer shortly. Let's see. The only last key thing, and I'll wrap up my slides here, is the final piece at the bottom is the recommendations section. So that's a little more important than endorsements. Recommendations is the modern form of letters of testimonial. Those of us old enough to remember, you used to go on job interviews and had to bring along 3 letters of recommendation or a letter of testimonial. Those have almost gone by the wayside now, because companies don't want a bunch of extra printed stuff, and they don't trust them because people would generally just write them for themselves and sign them. So there wasn't a lot of credibility with the old letters of reference. There is a lot of credibility to this LinkedIn recommendation section, because the only people that can recommend you are people that you're connected to on a first degree basis. They can't be anonymous. It's going to show their photo. It's going to show their title. So in other words, recruiters can tell to some degree the credibility of these people. Oh, if 3 verifiable executives at these 3 big companies say you're great, probably means you're pretty good. However, there's millions of people who don't have any recommendations. They have none. So if you don't have any, don't feel bad. It's handy, it's useful, but it's not, again, one of the things I'd say is absolutely essential. So ideally, you would ask 3 or 5 or 7 people, coworkers, customers, vendors, anyone you think would say nice things about you. You can go to that person's profile, look up your friend. If you look to the right of their name, there'll be a more box, as it says on the slide here, and there's a button that says request recommendation. And you're just inviting that person to submit one. Let me just show you real quick. So if I looked up a fictitious, it has to be somebody I know. Let's look up one of our staff members at UWPCE. Oh, we're not connected. Well, that's not going to work. Let's look up a friend of mine who won't mind. Look up Jeff Levy, except he's probably already invited me. Okay, let's look up my wife. I'll pick on my wife. Oh, I'm in my Joe Job Seeker profile, so she hasn't connected. Well, I didn't think of that. Okay, because it's got to be a first-degree connection. I could do it from my profile, but I'm logged in as Joe Job Seeker. So picture, if you will, if you look up one of your friends and open their profile, in the More button on the right, you'll see something that says Request Recommendation or Give Recommendation. So just obviously, that's how you would ask them to submit one. Or if you want to make their day and write a letter of testimonial for them, you can click the Give one and it'll show up. Now, don't worry, it doesn't automatically publish them till you approve them. So nobody can write something nasty about you. Nobody can have a bunch, if they have a bunch of typos in it, you can kick it back to them and gently tell them, hey, would you mind fixing those? You can't edit it, though. It will not let you edit your own recommendations, or what would be the point of this, right? So I would say, again, a good best practice is to get like 5 or 10 of those. If you're a business owner or a consultant, you might have more than that because you've got lots of customers who would submit testimonials. But the average professional, I'd say 3, 5, 7, that's pretty typical. But again, not absolutely essential. Don't panic if you don't have a bunch of those yet. Okay, last but not least, as far as the profile sections themselves, I already talked about the ad profile at the top. There is all those optional sections: languages, patents, honors, and awards. Somebody asked if they should put awards on there. Absolutely. You can either put your awards or honors under the job you got them, just as a description, or your school, or there's a separate section for honors and awards if you want to plug that in and stick them there. So make sure you look through those options, all those optional sections. In the very, very basic contact info section, let me show you. So up under your profile at the top here, so go back to my Joe Job Seeker, click on his name, go to the edit profile screen. If I go to the contact info section here, it'll have your email, but it's only going to show your email to your first degree friends. So don't worry that your email is going to 600 million people. But it does show you what your primary email is. If you have any websites you want to add, if you've got a portfolio site or your own company, you can add that in there. You can add up, I think it's up to 3 websites. And so think of that. I was also going to mention on this page that they've just done this recently, put it here. They used to have it somewhere else. So right under, very important to some of you, right under this top section, there's a little section called Open to Job Opportunities. You see that? So that is the new placement where LinkedIn is allowing people to basically signal to everyone, hey, I'm looking for a new job. So if you click that option, click the pencil, it gives you 3 choices. You can say I'm no longer open. So if you're not looking for a job, you can turn that off and say I'm not looking. If you are looking, you can either choose to let every LinkedIn member see you're looking. Like if there's no confidentiality, I want as many people as possible to know, just pick all LinkedIn members. So everyone who goes to your profile will see it says open to job opportunities. That again is why I don't think you need to say it in your headline overtly. But if you're in a confidential situation, you can pick only recruiters. And what that does, you have to read the fine print, but it will show any actual paid recruiters on LinkedIn that you're looking for a job. It will not show anyone else. It will not show the standard users. It will also block anyone at your company, whatever company you work for, Microsoft or whatever. It will not let recruiters from Microsoft see that you're looking. So it's pretty good at guarding your confidentiality, but I can't say it's foolproof, because if Microsoft hired a recruiter with a different company name, an outside recruiter, they could see that turned on. So you want to read the fine print on that one if you're really worried. I will say in actual practice, in all the years I've been doing this, I don't think I could tell you one story of where someone had that set to only recruiters and they got busted or got in trouble by their company.
not only because it hides it from most people and blocks the company people, but a lot of people just leave that on permanently and they just play dumb and go, I probably had that on 5 years ago and didn't turn it off. So I can't give you an ironclad guarantee, but I will say most people at least have the recruiter's one on. And if they're very openly looking, they turn it to all. Okay, so you can look at those two options. All right. What else do we got? Everyone on LinkedIn is given a unique web link that's called their LinkedIn address. So the newest form of contact info that people put on their business cards, on their resume, most people at the top of their resume now put their LinkedIn address. But as a new user, you get a randomly assigned address until you realize you can actually customize it. So for those who haven't already done this, it's always it shortens it and it just makes it more personal. So if I go back to Joe Job Seeker, okay, we're on his edit profile page, go to the top right, you said it says edit public profile and URL. If you click on that, in the top right of that screen, you're going to see this is your address. This is your unique LinkedIn web link that will take anyone to your profile if you give them that link. So just click on the button to edit that. And if you have a bunch of random characters in there because they were assigned as a new user, just put in your name. And if someone has already grabbed your name, just as we all do with email addresses, try a middle initial, try a dash, just try different methods till you can get the one you want. But once you save that, that's your link. So that would be the contact info you would put on your resume or give out to people. It's also called your public profile URL, but most people just call it your LinkedIn address. Okay, I got ahead of myself. I already talked about the next section about the open to job opportunities that allows you to signal you're looking. And then last but not least, they're under your education, under your experience, and under your summary, you might have noticed, let me go back in here. So if I go to edit Joe Job Hunter, go back to his edit screen, you can upload web links or multimedia files. So if I went to like his experience section, went down and let's say when he worked at this company, Trafix, okay, and I go to edit that job, okay, right at the bottom, it says media. And I can either upload a file, a PDF, a PowerPoint, or something like that, or I can link to an online website. So this allows you to deck out your experience in education with some multimedia links and things. I'll be honest, I don't use this much because two reasons. One is I think it tends to clutter these things up if they have a lot of that stuff in there. But the second reason is I see a lot of people put that stuff, and more often than not, it's not relevant and it's honestly not very high quality. So I'll see people who like, here's a brochure I worked on 13 years ago, and times have changed and that brochure looks really outdated, or that company's products has nothing to do. So I would be really, really careful. If you're going to upload any work samples or product, make sure it's high quality, it's relevant to your current profession. To just put stuff can work against you. I also wouldn't upload your resume on here. I've had some people who think, oh, why don't I put a copy of my resume on here? I wouldn't do that because no one's looking for it to be on here. And if you ever change your resume or profile, they kind of get out of sync. And I don't know any recruiter that wants your resume on here. They're going to treat your LinkedIn profile basically as your resume. And if they want a resume, they'll ask you for one. So I've seen a few people upload their resume file. I don't recommend that. I think it hurts you more than it helps you. Okay. So that's it. I took a little longer than planned, in part because of all your wonderful questions. I can stick around pretty much as long as needed. I know some of you probably have to run now or in 15 minutes, but just I think in the spirit of efficiency, because I've had so many questions come in, I think the fairest way to do it, and apologies I couldn't speak to every one of them, is those still on the call, start asking questions again, and let me start with the people still hanging around that have a question, and I'll just
Matt,
take those in the order. Yeah.
We have some questions. I would say start from the top because we have some questions that multiple people have liked.
Oh, have they? Okay.
And those go at the top. And then for the remaining questions, the people who are still on the call, please feel free to like some of those. I
guess that's fair. If people have already typed them, let me just kind of go through the top and I'll do my best.
Like the first one already has 12 likes and counting.
Okay.
All right.
Like I said, LinkedIn's a big topic. So I'm going to give you the pithy short answers to these in the interest of time. Is LinkedIn Premium worth it? Not usually. Almost everything you need to do on LinkedIn, as I'm going to talk at length in the next webinar, is absolutely free. The only two reasons to upgrade, I think, is if you're a high volume salesperson or recruiter, well, then you're using this tool every day to do your job. You might want one of the premium subscriptions. The only other main reason to get a paid account is you can only run so many searches a month as a free user. You don't know how many, it doesn't tell you, but if you start using LinkedIn really heavily in the middle of the month, it may say, you've hit the commercial use limit, and an error message comes up and it says you can't run any more searches. So if you consistently hit that, it's like running out of cell phone minutes. You'd have to get a paid account to run more searches or wait until the next month. But here's the trick. The cheap subscription on LinkedIn, the career subscription, doesn't fix that problem. So if your problem is you're running out of searches each month, you got to step up to the business package, which is about $50 a month. So it's not cheap. But in general, I'll say 90% of my clients who have gotten like the career subscription, they report after a month or two, it doesn't do much for me. Plus you get a free trial for 30 days. So you could try any of those subscriptions for 30 days. But long story short, no, I don't think for most people it adds that much. Okay, going down the list. If you're open to side work, like gig economy stuff as part of your professional career, again, if it's related to the work you want to be doing or your main career, I would work it in the work experience. If it's unrelated, if you're just doing retail or selling cars or mowing lawns on the side, no, I probably wouldn't include that on my LinkedIn experience because it's just not highly relevant. So it just all kind of depends on what you want to emphasize and what your current career focus is. How relevant are those other things? A couple people asked about volunteer experience. I think I had quickly said, yes, I would include any volunteer work in the optional LinkedIn volunteer section you can plug in, unless there is some special reason. I'm trying to think if it's political, if it's faith-based, if it's something you're worried might polarize your audience. I mean, you could still do it. It's free country, but if it was something you thought was pretty sensitive that you volunteered in, you might be better off leaving it off. Okay. Should you mention you were laid off or fired or terminated? I get that question a lot. No, most people don't think you should mention any of that either on your resume or on LinkedIn. Specifically say you were laid off. It is assumed if your date's ended that something happened, and the interviewer will ask you when that time comes, what happened. So the general rule of that is you don't stress that in LinkedIn or resumes. Are gaps bad? Well, yes, a big gap in your work experience is going to be one of the many factors employers look at and decide, is this person, a risk? They're going to worry. Did your skills get dull? Did you have a health condition? Did you not work for a few years to raise kids? I mean, so they might look at those. I generally say any gap longer than about 6 months, I would insert something in your work experience that explains it. Sabbatical, what else do people put? School, took 6 months off to do school, or 2 years, took a break to raise family, personal sabbatical. Just to not let recruiters use their imaginations and think you were in prison or something, or maybe you were in prison. But yeah, the short answer is more than 6 months or a year, I would explain the gap. Anything less than that, I probably wouldn't bother. They'll probably just assume you were taking a break until you found your next job. Very modern question. Where should you add your preferred pronouns? There's not a built-in place to do that, but I think most people would do that. That's a good question. Because I've seen people do that. I think if I go to edit Joe Jobseeker's profile, so let's go into his screen real quick. If I go to his name section, whoops, I'm already there, go up to the top, click on the little pencil that edits this section, first and last name. There is a place to put a former name, like if you had a maiden name or something like that. But let's see, if you had a preferred pronoun, if we did something like that, let's test it real quick and see what it does. So it would treat it like that. So it would stick that in the middle if you were okay with handling it that way. I guess alternatively, you could stick it at the end of the last name, put it like that. I mean, I think you'd still come up if someone looked at your last name. So that might be a little more elegant way to do it, but there isn't a built-in feature for that. So I think those are your only two real options for that. Okay. All right. Next question on the list. If a recruiter searches profiles with recommendations versus ones with not recommendations. All I can tell you on that, Pravita, who asked the question, is recommendations do count in the big overall formula that we don't know exactly what it is, but they're one of like 100 factors that determines how high you rank when a recruiter searches. So I can't tell you the exact percentage. I can guess it maybe is 5%. So someone with a lot of recommendations might get 5% more credit in a search than someone who doesn't. So that's not enough to freak out about, but it's also not nothing. So if you had a a couple people would say nice things about, yeah, I might as well go ask them for some. But I've never seen evidence that's an absolute deal breaker or something that's a massive part of the search formula. Okay. Someone asked about personal profiles versus company profiles. Now it depends what you're asking. If you're asking about company pages, which is a whole different feature of the site for businesses to set up company pages, I can't really speak to that tonight because that's different than personal profiles. If you're talking about you have a consultancy or something and want to feature that on your profile, then you would do what I talked about earlier. You would just sprinkle in descriptions of your company in the about section, in the headline. So like on mine, and I don't think this is what you're asking, but just to show you. So if I look up my profile here and I go down to my about section, because I'm a business owner, I wrote most of mine about here's the services I offer, here's what I do, that kind of thing. So you can work some company stuff in your personal profile, but if you're talking about setting up a company page and advertising, that's just a whole different feature of the site I not only don't know as much about, but is just not as relevant to tonight's class, unfortunately. Okay, there's a lot of help menu in the LinkedIn help menu. All these topics, if you look them up, there's going to be a lot of information on them too. Let's see, if you have multiple jobs at the same company, would you include everyone or just the highest one? And would you include each separate job with dates or your full breakdown? I keep saying this, I think it comes down to common sense and relevance. If you had 3 jobs, each 2 years long, that were building and showed promotion and progression, I would include them all in there with specific dates. They have to have specific dates because that tells your story and it shows you climb the ladder in advance. If you were a project manager for 19 years, but for 6 months you were an interim sales coordinator, I probably wouldn't put it because it's not relevant. It was such a little thing. Why bother? So it really just comes down to what story you're trying to tell and what do you think is going to make the best impression on that? Okay, does that make sense? Interestingly, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to stop my video. I thought I had my laptop plugged in, but it's telling me I didn't. So let me make sure I've got power on this. I should have anticipated that. I thought it was already in there. All right. Okay, back in business. Where was I? Let's see. Someone asked in the skills and endorsements section, does the order of, aside from the top 3 that I said you can pin down, does the order matter? And I would simply say no. I see no evidence. It matters either in the formula or matters to anyone reading it. So I wouldn't worry at all about order of your skills. Does Career Horizons help with resume and LinkedIn prep? That is a service I offer. It doesn't really have anything to do with tonight's stuff. If someone was looking for resume and LinkedIn editing help, that is something I do. I should mention, however, I'm at least 2 weeks out from being able to take on any more clients. Not that I'm here to sell any of you, but yes, I do that work. I'm just a few weeks out from being able to do more of that, okay? What else do we have? I already answered the one about draft. There is no draft version. Someone asked, can we change our email address to a different one for the profile and the contact info? That's a good question. I don't believe you can. I don't believe you can have a separate email for your contact info section. I think it automatically puts in your primary one that your account's set up on. I would normally take the time to test that. I don't think we have time, but you could simply test that, try changing it and see what happens, but I'd be surprised if you could. Okay, where are we? I'm at 29 to go. I'll try to get through them all. If someone looks at your resume or recruiter and doesn't contact you, I think you mean looks at your profile. If they don't contact you, it pretty much means they didn't see what they were looking for. So it generally is not going to get you, I mean, there's not much you can do about that. If it showed you they contacted you and you saw that in the who's viewed your profile section, I guess you could follow up with a note and say, hey, I saw you stop by my profile. Can I help you with something? I don't think you're going to get a lot of response, because a lot of times people will look at your profile. Oh, I was looking for a friend of mine. You've got a similar name or a different name that I was looking for. Or they were looking for a C++ programmer and you had a little bit of that. I mean, they ruled you out because you weren't exactly what they were looking for. So normally that's not going to lead to anything, but I guess you could kind of chase them and ask them and say, you know, is there anything more I can help you with? And it could potentially lead to something. I just haven't seen that happen a lot. If someone said much earlier, if you have a premium account, can you see who's looked at you, even if you're set to be anonymous? Premium accounts do give you a little more details on who's looked at you. I don't find that very helpful, but I don't believe, if someone is anonymous, I don't believe premium overrides that. I'm 97% sure on that. I haven't tested that in a while, because I don't think LinkedIn could afford to have someone say, I want to be anonymous, and just by virtue someone paid, they suddenly can break through that veil of secrecy and see who you are. I think LinkedIn would be in a world of hurt. So I'd be really surprised, but we'd have to double check on that. Black and white photos to stand out. I mean, I'm not a big fan of black and white photos for most people, because they're obviously very artsy fartsy. And I would generally do that if there's a compelling brand reason to do that. If you're a photographer or filmographer or something, or if you just think you have a wonderful black and white shot of yourself, go for it. I personally find it kind of clashes against the rest of the colored wallpaper and the color on the site. So I'm not a personal fan, but like I said, it's different strokes for different folks. Okay, someone just basically said, acknowledged, yes, keywords matter in the headline, and you're right, that hasn't changed much in decades. Well, the site's only been around 17 or so years, but yeah, keywords and headlines are critical. Google, as someone said, Google shares what keywords are popular. Does LinkedIn do the same? Not that I've ever seen a tool on LinkedIn. Years ago, they had something like that and they got rid of it. So there's not any way on LinkedIn I've seen that will tell you, here's the keywords you want to have on there. The closest that comes is that part in the editing the skills section where it just gives you the menu. Here's all the skills related to what you do. Team leadership, team motivation. So that's telling you what the common lingo is, but it's not telling you their popularity, if that makes sense. I think the best source of that, again, is just look up advertisements in your field on the LinkedIn jobs page or Indeed.com or a site like that, and you'll pretty quickly get a sense of what's hot and what's not. But LinkedIn doesn't have a built-in thing. Someone asked if you're trying to increase your visibility in more than other countries or more than the US. I don't do a lot of that, but I think most major countries have a version of LinkedIn, you know, .Canada, I forget all the abbreviations. You could Google that, or I think if you go down to the, where is it hiding? I would just Google that because I'd have to hunt for it. But yeah, there's different country versions. So if you're trying to get hired in France or Mexico or Brazil or for whatever reason, I think it would make sense to set another profile up in that language of that country and under the .Brazil or .whatever header. And so you'd have your main one and then that other one. Someone asked about articles or long posts. That's really not related to profiles. What they're talking about is on the homepage of LinkedIn, you can write a note and push it out to all your friends like Facebook, or you can write a formal article. Now that's a much bigger deal. If you write an article, it should be a really good, literally like you're publishing a paper or a blog posting. So articles are really just used for like subject matter experts and consultants, and they go to a much wider range of people on LinkedIn. If you just write a short posting, hey, here's an article I liked, or I'm going to this event next week, or does anyone have any insight into the blah, blah, blah certification? That just goes out to your friends and they can like it or share it. So what I'm trying to say on that. So, you know, some people do a lot of that posting, others don't. The article thing, though, is reserved for a pretty rare number of people who are kind of thought leaders or really trying to build their brand as an expert in something, okay? And there's more help on that you can read in the help menu. Okay, so some people is, someone asked and expressed a lot of concern about age bias and dates, and I absolutely agree. I think age bias is a massive problem we've got. It's a whole topic I've written, blogged about. We could set up and talk a whole hour about that, and maybe that's something we'll do. In the context of LinkedIn, though, it really just comes down to like people asked, how far back do you go with dates or not? Do you put everything? Do you put, only go back 10 years? And I already kind of gave you my thoughts on that. So I think you must have misunderstood me, or maybe I came across the wrong way. I agree there's age bias and it's a big problem. I'm just saying for LinkedIn, there's only so much you can do about it, and you have to decide what to do with those dates. Even the experts, I've had much older workers and experts say, only put 10 years. And I've had others who say, put everything on there, because they're going to figure out eventually, don't be defensive about your age. There's two schools of thought on that. Again, really important topic. If you're interested in that, on my blog on Career Horizons, I've written a lot about that you can look up. The next question, someone asked about making connections on LinkedIn. That's a topic for the next webinar. That's going to be all about connections and networking. So I'm going to respectfully say that comes in the next session. What makes me cringe on a profile? I love that question. What makes me cringe are bad photos, next to no content. What else? Cliches, people who just say results oriented and a whole bunch of just standard cliches without any creativity or personality, anything like that. Those are the main things, but a lot of that is just ignorance. It's just people haven't had to use LinkedIn much or taken this class, so they don't have, as much knowledge of it, but you all should now know how to do more than that. Okay, PU, we're at 6:30. I'm certainly willing to stick around and keep answering things, but I don't know, do we have to finish up now, or?
I will drop out forcefully because my laptop is dying.
Okay.
So I think we can give it 2 minutes. Why don't you scroll through the questions and see something that really jumps out and that you're not handling, or a question where you think it's important to a lot of people. But I do want to, we still have about 189 participants. So I wanted to thank everybody who's here. Thank you for joining us. Do sign up for the next webinars. And as we said, we will send the recordings and the slides, email back you the recordings and the slides. So Matt, why don't you just go on for a couple of minutes, look through them and see if there are some good questions there that you have missed out.
I first of all salute everyone. This is a very engaged group, and we got a much higher turnout, I think, than we were anticipating. So I could stay here all night. PU, though, I'm getting the sense of I can't stick around for another 20 minutes, or.
Oh, you can.
Okay.
It's not me.
Okay. I will. How about Jamie? I think you're the one kind enough to administer this. Can you stick around? I don't know if I can keep doing this if UW PCE signs off.
The session won't end until I physically end it. So if you would like to answer all the questions, you can certainly do that. Okay.
If you're willing to do that, I just feel bad we haven't gotten to all of them. I'll try to keep going quickly through them. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, then all right. So PU, you'll sign off and I'll just keep going through this. So yeah, some of these we've talked about. Adding special awards at school. Yes, I would recommend that. Put that under education section. Someone, now we're getting a lot of kind people signing off, and now it's cluttering up all the questions. I might have to rethink that. If you claim skills that don't have endorsements, no, it doesn't look bad. That's what most people do. Like I said, endorsements are not all that important. So the key thing is have your 50 skills. Don't worry so much if you don't have endorsements. Most people don't. How much you want to describe a past job, I think it comes down to relevance. So if it's an older job that just doesn't have much to do anymore with what you want to do, I wouldn't write more than a couple sentences. If you did something 15 years ago that's so incredibly relevant to what you're doing today, then I would talk more about it. So the length of any job description is going to be just, again, I keep saying it, but just based on the relevance to your current goals. Can you hide recommendations? Yes, you can. There is, if you go to edit any recommendation, it lets you delete it or hide it. So if somehow one is not appropriate to be showing now, you could turn that off. Oh gosh, they keep coming in. What else do we got? Okay, someone said one of the benefits of a premium account is access to LinkedIn Learning. And the little issue there is your public library gives you that too. So I've had people say, oh, I got a premium LinkedIn account that gave me this online learning. I believe all of that is still absolutely free if you go to the King County Library or most public library systems. So I don't know if I would pay LinkedIn just for access to those learning tools if my tax dollars are already giving it to me through the library, but you can double check that. Should you list Stanford University if you did not complete a degree? Or let's even open that question up. If you didn't complete a degree, should you mention that education? I usually do, unless it was only like a couple months. If you went to 1 or 2 or 3 years of school but didn't get a degree, I would phrase that in the education section as like whatever it is. Master's degree in organizational psychology program or studies, implying you were in the program or you did some of the studies, and then say Stanford or whatever the school, but you didn't say you had a degree. So I think it still gives you credit for the time you spent. Now, if you really want to be honest, you could put in the description under that, completed 70 credits or attended, attended 2 years. I mean, you might describe how much of that program you completed, but I usually just add the word studies or program after the degree name to signify I took some of the classes, but I didn't actually get the degree. Someone asked about military rank. Yes, I absolutely think if you want to add in your work experience, military rank, you can certainly put that in. That might be a case where you really want to add in those extra words after the title, though, like if, because it may not translate to the civilian world. So you might say whatever you were, blankety blank officer, 7A, I forget all the designations, but you might put after that like supply chain and logistics focus or something to help be findable and help the reader get a better sense of what your military service sort of translated into. But yeah, absolutely be proud of it, put it on there. Someone asked, should you create 2 profiles for 2 different job searches in different areas? Oh, it's such a tempting thought, but not only is that against LinkedIn's terms of service, so they could cancel those accounts, or I guess cancel you as a user, but the problem is it confuses everybody, because if someone looks you up, everyone looks you up by name. So if they look you up, it's like, well, which Matt Youngquist should I connect with? This one or that one? You start, it's like having 2 sets of books. You start having, I've got 10 connections on this profile, 27 on this one. 99.9% of times it's going to backfire and you're going to regret doing it. I guess it is technically possible, but just be aware that if LinkedIn somehow picks up on that, they'll probably shut one of those accounts down because you're only allowed to have 1 per person technically. Okay, let's see. How do you tell, some of this just isn't really related to LinkedIn, but how do you tell if a recruiter contacts you as genuine and trustworthy? Some of it is just trusting your instincts. If they seem very vague or cryptic or salesy, spammy, I kind of back away. The first thing I would do is I would look at the company they say they're with, and I would Google it, and I'd try to find a legitimate company website that shows, yes, that is a company. Where is it located? If I can't track it down on Google and they don't have a website, I consider it pretty shady. And then beyond that, like I said, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to engage with a recruiter and reply and say, hey, I'm glad you reached out. Before I commit to anything, or would love to hear a little bit more about the job, what you found in my profile that interested you, like test them a little bit. Why did they come to you? And you'll pretty quickly figure out if they're legit or not. They either don't have a company you can trace down, or they're not answering your questions to any sufficient detail. Okay.
Matt, I
Yeah.
think I'm going to have to cut you off. You can answer 1 question. So look through.
I tried, people. I tried.
Why don't you look through the questions and pick out your favorite?
Okay. Now the pressure's on. Let's see. Oh, God. A lot of them are really specific. What haven't I answered? All of those, the remaining ones are so specific, or stuff I'm going to cover in the next webinar. So I'm just going to throw in the towel, call it a night.
Okay.
Apologies. If you look up my website, career-horizons.com, I'd welcome anyone, if I didn't fully answer your question, email me there. I'll answer it offline for you. But hopefully I got through the vast majority of what people had on their mind. Okay.
All right. Well, I want to say that one more time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Matt, for presenting
Thank you.
this very helpful seminar. And we're looking forward to the next 3. And I hope all of you can be there as well. Do sign up. And if you can't, sign up just so that we can send you the recording and slides for that. See you all next week.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody.